Welcome, wherever you are, to the Writers' Trust Awards. First and foremost, I'll ask you to join us in acknowledging the land on which we are filming is part of the Dish with One Spoon territory, named for a treaty between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee and the Mississaugas of New Credit. This treaty bound them to share the territory and protect the land of the Dish, which represents what is now known as Southern Ontario. Since its creation, subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been incorporated into the treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. We extend our gratitude to the past, present, and future elders and teachers who carry the knowledge of this land. We are truly grateful for the opportunity to create, live, learn, read, and write on this land together. My name is Thea Mutonji, author of the story collection Shut Up You're Pretty, which was a finalist for the Rogers Writers' Trust Fiction Prize and won a Trillium Award. I will be your host for this afternoon. Over the next 30 minutes, we will meet the 12 amazingly talented emerging writers nominated for these 4 Writers' Trust Awards and unveil the winner. The thing about the concept of emerging is that it's never conclusive. Every new work is stuffed with the sense of newness that feels like the first time. Awards like these ones allow us to imagine a career where we're not only emerging, but we're evolving. As for myself, nomination, award or not, I wake up and it's like the first time at my desk. I love the feeling of emerging into a new story. So, are you ready to emerge? We asked each of this year's finalists to shoot some videos on their phones to show us what their workspace looked like or what inspired them and drove them forward as creators. Each of them provided a unique response. Let's discover what they've shared, starting with the finalists for the RBC Bronwen Wallace Award for Emerging Writers for Short Fiction. The Bronwen Wallace Award was created to provide opportunities for recognition early in a career and is open to writers under the age of 35 and unpublished in book form. The prize is sponsored by the RBC Foundation's Emerging Artist Project. For the first time in the prize's 26-year history, 2 awards, one for fiction and another for poetry, will be presented simultaneously today. For the short fiction category, applicants were evaluated on the basis of a short writing sample. The jury was composed of Chris Burton, Jamila Ibrahim, and Karian Lung. And the finalists are...
As a kid, I did not grow up around books, but around storytellers. My father was the head of our cow, and my mother was a seamstress. So you can imagine our living room being this hangout space for people of every walk of life who would sit on mattresses, sometimes with a cup of tea in their hands, and tell stories. Some would start in the beginning, some in the middle, some in the end. Some would sum up the whole story up front, and then go back and give you all the details.
He had arrived a stranger and remained one. He did not care now. In a matter of days, he would be on a plane, and Kabul would welcome him with open arms. He would sit in his small courtyard and drink tea with the familiar sun over his head and the comforting knowledge that the harsh, beautiful mountains stood all around him in the distance, protecting him without demanding anything in return.
Before I started writing, I wanted to be a painter. I think for both forms, drawing and writing, it's important to be able to see clearly, to be aware of detail. When you're drawing a pomegranate in a crystal bowl, for example, you have to be aware of the dark bruise on its side, the dry tips of its crown. When you're writing, in order to lead your reader through the world you're conjuring, you need to capture all the right details, just like in painting.
At the moment, she is working on a painting of Malaby. She calls it the most beautiful dessert, with the pink of rose water, the green of crumbled pistachios, the pristine white flakes of coconut. In another painting, she tells him, there is an aluminum pot of steaming dark coffee, scattered cardamom pods, an arabesque pattern tiled turquoise tabletop. Her favorite is one of a tea-stained cup. The viewer can see only a part of the brown leaf pattern at the bottom of the chipped cup. The future is unclear.
Welcome to my space. So I'll often write at this main table here, but it's also a place that I quilt. This was originally supposed to be a writing desk, but it has turned into a sewing desk, of course. So on a day like today, I can actually just write outside with an amazing view of the city. I used to ask my dad what I was like when I was born. I asked him while we stood in line at the grocery store, or while we watched the news on TV, or while he double-checked that my seatbelt was done up properly. His answer was always, a bear. I'd laugh and say, what was I really like? What did I look like? Just like a bear, he'd say. No fur at all.
And the winner is Leah Mull for 6 Things My Father Taught Me About Bears.
I am shocked to even be giving a speech. The entire shortlist was amazing, and so I am beyond thrilled and honored. Thank you so much to the jury, Jamila, Carrie Ann, Chris, thank you. And thank you to everyone at Writers Trust. I know that it's been a ridiculously hard year, and you've all made it look so easy. For me, a big part of writing has been finding a community. I wrote most of my stories sitting at my friend Bree's dining room table, and I don't know that I would have been able to write that story if she hadn't carved out that time in her schedule to have writers over to her place just to write. So thank you, Bree, and thank you to every writer I've ever just sat quietly with writing. And last but not least, my story is about family, and I don't know where I'd be without my own. Mom, Dad, Lucas, Koba, Caitlin, thank you guys so much for always having my back. And to my partner, AJ, who reads everything I write as many times as I ask him to, thank you so much. I love you all.
Thank you very much for that, Leah. We'll continue with the poetry companion to our first prize. Let me introduce you to the jury for the RBC Bronwen Wallace Award for Emerging Writers for Poetry. Clara Duplessis, Benjamin Hertwig, and Kenisa Lubrim. The finalists are
For me, writing is really about getting out of my head. And to do that, I need to get out of my space. So I'll get on my bike, I'll head out for a walk, and observe people and things. While I'm walking, I might talk to myself out loud or make sounds. And when I see something or hear something or get a kernel, I'll stop and write it down in my notebooks. And later, I'll see if there's a poem there or pieces that can be put together and turned into a poem.
I bleach the spine of a rabbit, coccyx to skull. In a blue plastic wash basin, liquid eats away fur and flesh. Leftovers silt the bottom, cling to the side of sudden movement, vulnerable space, connection between pelvis and lumbar, hips crack in my hands.
I like to think of poetry first and foremost as a conversation between myself and the reader, but also between myself and other poets and thinkers. I work out of this very old building in Toronto, which has these great massive windows and a view of the downtown. I like to have a lot of books around and photographs and images, anything that I can use to build bits of language. Usually once I've accumulated enough phrases or ideas, then on a good day, a poem can begin to take shape. My domestic, granddaughter dirge, gorge, grief assigned, whole misunderstandings. Rooms for serving, rooms for the served. Paul and Cull, this check day, all Harmattan hammer. All low hurt breeze. Ring beams and smoke chains and shake dance and what static and what moves.
The truth is, we don't really know for certain who wrote these notes. My mom thinks it was probably my grandmother because of the handwriting, which is what I thought as well when I came across the envelope, really by accident last summer. It's always surprising for me what emerges from these moments of contact, how in this case some loose leaf notes found in a drawer somehow channeled a long sequence of poems about loss and contingency and traumatic inheritance. So I do feel indebted to these notes and their likely author, my grandmother, whose close attention to the world I experienced as a profoundly emotional charge. It begins with soaked cherry, vanilla, oak, scents to coax rats from plastic homes. When their noses lift, scientists shoot electric barbs. Until fur rises, small bodies shudder. Soon it's noticed that grandbabies down the rat line have begun to tremble at their first whiff of amaretto. We brace for the coming disaster is a soft song that neatly folds between useful knowledge of water bowl, sawdust, prehensile tail.
And the winner is Alexa Winnick.
Hello from Edinburgh. If you're watching this today, I hope you're keeping safe and well. Winning the Bronwen Wallace Award is an incredible honor and a truly unexpected gift this year. I keep telling people it feels surreal to process good news like this, but mostly I just feel full of sincere gratitude, especially to the Writers' Trust and RBC for making all this possible, and to the jury for your generous reading of my poems. I also want to thank Nina and Zoe. It's an honor to be alongside of you on the shortlist and to read your incredible work. It's a shame that we can't meet tonight in person, but I do hope that our paths will cross again in the future. This award means so much to me as someone who didn't write very much in my 20s as I was trying to stay afloat in some difficult times. And when I returned to writing a few years ago as an MFA student, it felt like a fresh start and almost like a second life. And this award really is such a tangible support and affirmation to keep going and persevere in my work. So thank you. I couldn't accept this award without thanking some very important people in my life. I want to thank my MFA cohort and teachers at St. Andrews, Lily, Sean, Mari, Zane, Sam, Emma, Don, and Ollie. Thank you. I also want to thank Alice and Ryan at the @Sea Writers Residency in Margate. That week last November, writing in that beautiful space was everything I needed to write these poems, and they wouldn't have happened without you. I want to thank the brilliant poets and writers I've met in Edinburgh who have helped me find my footing and a sense of community here. A special shout out to Rosa Campbell and Becky Birrell for your unflagging and frankly relentless encouragement this year, to Emma Jones for your camaraderie in dark times and wisdom in all things, and to Helena Furnells, who was the first one to read these poems. I also want to thank my family in Windsor. I miss you. I wish we were celebrating this together. And thank you to my sisters Allison and Juliana for your solidarity through some tough years. And thank you to Mom and Dad. You are the most persevering people I know. And you've given me everything I need. Thank you. My last thank you is to Justin, who has been by my side for many, many years and is always telling me to bet on myself. And in this one particular case was right, so thank you. To close, these poems were inspired by some notes that we think were written by my grandmother, who has left us now, passed away about 10 years ago. We miss her greatly. And in every way imaginable, I wouldn't be here without her. So I would like to dedicate this award in memory of Eleanor Highland. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Catherine Clark, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Writers' Trust Awards Emerging Writers Edition. We are very excited to present these 4 $10,000 prizes today and to recognize remarkable creators at the beginning of their careers. We can't wait to see what these 12 finalists will do next. In a year of such uncertainty, a day to honor writers is truly a thing to celebrate. So many writers work in isolation. So this opportunity to reward hard work and imagination, to come together as a community, well, it feels really quite important. Founded in 1976, the mission of the Writers' Trust is to advance, nurture, and celebrate Canadian writers so that their voices are heard across this country and far beyond. It's tough to make a living as a writer, whether you're established or just starting out, and it's tougher still when you consider all of the obstacles 2020 has thrown our way. This spring, in response to COVID-19, the Writers' Trust was proud to provide an essential lifeline to hundreds of writers from coast to coast to coast. When the pandemic was declared, we quickly set up an emergency relief fund that delivered over $375,000 to more than 250 writers. For us, it was an important demonstration of our commitment to writers who now face daunting and unprecedented challenges. And as we head into our 45th year, the Writers' Trust has further plans to assist writers, including opportunities emerging from our ongoing reflections around equity and opportunity. Of course, we can't do things without help, and I'd like to acknowledge a few key supporters who have made the Writers' Trust Awards Emerging Writers Edition possible. Our presenting partner is the Humber School for Writers. Our media partner is the Globe and Mail. We'd like to thank the Government of Canada through the Department of Canadian Heritage. And always our gratitude to our project partners Indigo, CBC Books, Quill and Choir, and White Pine Pictures, the producer of this video, as well as the numerous corporate, foundation, and individual sponsors who support the Writers' Trust. Thank you to all of you from the bottom of our heart. And now, back to Taya to introduce the finalists for the Dayne Ogilvie Prize for LGBTQ Emerging Writers.
Thank you, Catherine. The Dayne Ogilvie Prize for LGBTQ Emerging Writers is presented annually to a blossoming talent from the LGBTQ community who is in the developing stages of their career and whose work published to date demonstrate great literary promise. The value of the prize doubled in 2020 and now rewards the winner $10,000. The prize was established by Robin Pacific and is supported by one anonymous donor. The jury was composed of Trevor Corkum, Leah Lakshmi Piepsna Samarasina, Lindsay Nixon. The finalists are
I think of this as my thinking tree, and I often come outside to take a break from writing when I feel that I need to step outside of myself. I think of writing at its best as a kind of communion. For me, it can be a way of losing myself as a singular individual, of instead pouring I into a we, of disappearing myself, if never entirely, into the Black freedom struggles past and present, struggles spanning the Caribbean, North and South America, the African continent, on behalf of human and planetary life.
Conversations across Black communities around the world are rendering it clear that anti-Blackness knows no borders. Few, if any, places in the world have been untouched by the legacies of European colonization and slavery, or the racist worldviews left in their wake. Contemporary movements for the dignity of Black life are underway throughout the African diaspora, many but certainly not all under the banner of Black Lives Matter. At the same time, the unique realities of anti-Black racism as it has evolved locally across different regions are also being widely shared and disseminated.
It's Smokey Sumac here, and I am showing you my writing space. This is my office. Welcome. And this is where the magic happens, although often it does happen on my couch. The most important thing in here is all the writers I'm surrounded by. I love having these books around, and I also love having the art around. This is fish scale art from Métis artist Erin Consmol. And then up here I have this beautiful photo of a deer bed in the fall by Olivia Mader.
For the love of all that is queer and brown, for those beautiful disabled bodies, wedding rings flashing on husbands' fingers, men so deeply in love with each other, a femme with glasses and bangs held on to my glance. Later I wept through readings of learning to love ourselves, our bodies, Each of our naked, burning hearts, our lipstick and our binders, our canes, our love. This one is simply for all of our love, which can never be wrong.
I just wanted to share this space because this is like the truest, messiest part of my practice. This is where I get it done. I've been processing theory through watercolors and poetry. Right now I'm feeling super inspired by horror and like this idea that queerness and trans identity, specifically like trans womanhood, is seen as like a monstrous identity, and I want to see what I can do with that moving forward. There's nothing really special about this place other than it's mine. I think I want us to be forever, because the cultivation of this craft has asked us to bear children we did not want, to crack open our chests for an audience, gazing into the veins of each other's world, wondering how this ecology survives. I like to think it lives in swamps, the bogs I grew up on, the wetlands that keep my lungs dripping in melodrama. How sometimes when I feel emotions, I can't tell if I'm drowning or if I'm too full of a divisive or maybe indecisive way of being.
And the winner is Ariel Twist.
Taya, thank you so much to the Writers' Trust and to the jurors, Lindsay, Trevor, and Leah, for this huge honor. It means the world to me to be a part of this legacy of like queer artists that have really shaped my own practice. I couldn't have done this without Arsenal Pulp, who published my first book, my agent, Rachel, and my family. Thanks so much.
Congratulations, Ariel. And now to present this afternoon's final prize. The Writers' Trust McClelland and Stewart's Journey Prize recognizes new and developing writers for the best short story published in a Canadian literary journal or annual anthology during the previous year. Now in its 32nd year, the prize has become a celebrated honor for writers that introduces readers to the next generation of great Canadian writers. The prize winner will receive $10,000. This is made possible by James A. Missioner's donation of his Canadian royalty earnings from the novel Journey. The jury was composed of Amy Jones, Doretta Liu, and myself. And it's particularly exciting as a juror to introduce you to the prize finalists. And here they are.
This is my writing space. I moved recently, so it's still a work in progress. I'm still getting set up. I love my writing space. It's my favorite space in my apartment. The shelving on the back wall contains files that I'd like to have easy access to, reference materials, and all of my stories in progress. I switch out the images on this bulletin board depending on what story I'm working on. I'm rarely conscious as to why I choose the images that I choose. The desk area is unusually tidy. Normally it looks more like this. We're in the food court with its terrible fluorescence and its stink of grease and its screaming babies. Me and Kat and Sierra and Liv and Coco. We're each sitting at different tables. We're each waiting. This is how we find them, the men. We let them find us.
Going to take you on a little tour of my corner bedroom office nook. My current obsession in writing is oil, so you can see I've got a little mausoleum of books related to the history of oil. Up here is where I keep my sort of choice verbs, some of my story ideas. I've got a little bit of archival research here from 1862. Here's the journal in which I recorded a conversation with an oil worker from Sarnia. That's all for today. Welcome to my office. Time to get back to work.
Inked in regal purple, the buildings rise up, space-aged and triumphant. A Jetson's wet dream. Towers slink up to the sky and cloud-like drums pepper the ground.
a suspended rail line curling through the scene, smokestacks and ladders and tanks and tubs, glimmering steel and perfect concrete, a shimmering fairy city, and the strange thing is that what you don't see is oil. What you never see is oil.
When I write into the future. I think about my nibblings, the children of my siblings and cousins, and the kind of worlds I want to show them. That world isn't perfect or pretty, but I hope it's one they can see themselves in, one they want to stop in and stay for a while. When I think about writing for them, I can write for days. I wake no matter how tired I am. Auntie said she taught herself to do the same things as a young Esqueo. She said she wanted to stop dreaming altogether because her dreams were always bad and true. I wonder if this is now our tradition, our coming-of-age story, stamping out dreams before they have a chance to take shape, cutting off a part of ourselves before the hurt can set in.
And the winner is Jessica Johns.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be receiving this award. Thank you to the Writers' Trust and the amazing jury members, Amy Jones, Doretta Lau, and Taya Mutanji, for reading this weird little story and feeling that it was deserving. Thank you to Grain Magazine and Lisa Bird Wilson for your excitement and care in publishing this story in the first place and for putting it forward for consideration for this award. I wrote this story thinking very deeply about the power of Nehiyaw Iskwewak, of dreaming, and of that deep, impenetrable kinship that I'm so lucky to have in my life. This story was influenced by my parents, who have unwaveringly believed in my writing, my siblings, my cousins, and of course the aunties, who inform every story I ever have to tell. Kinanas Gomitin, thank you.
On behalf of the Writers' Trust, I'd like to thank you for joining us and congratulations to today's winners as well as the rest of this year's finalists. Thank you again to the sponsors and supporters that made this all possible. A quick reminder that you're invited to join the Writers' Trust again next month on Wednesday, November 18th, when they present the Books of the Year edition of the Writers' Trust Awards and celebrate the nominees for the Writers' Trust Fiction Prize and the Hillary Weston Writers' Trust Prize for Nonfiction. The event will be hosted by Kamal Al-Saleli. More information is available at writerstrust.com. We hope to see you then.